Good morning or good afternoon. This is Stephen Clark from spaceflightnow.com, and welcome to our live coverage of the launch of the Landsat 9 Earth observation satellite today. Landsat 9 will launch from Vandenberg Space Force Base in California. At this time, the countdown is on track for liftoff from Vandenberg at 11:12 a.m. Pacific time. That's 2:12 p.m. Eastern Time. A short time ago, United Launch Alliance began loading cryogenic propellants into the Atlas V rocket. Right now, the liquid oxygen tank on the Centaur upper stage is nearing completion in loading. It's nearing the 100% level in topping. Uh, the first stage liquid oxygen tank has passed the 10% mark in loading, and the Centaur upper stage's liquid hydrogen tank just began loading a few minutes ago. In total, around 66,000 gallons of cryogenic fluids will be loaded into the Atlas V. The RP1 kerosene fuel, which powers the RD-180 engine on the Atlas first stage, is already inside the bronze-colored first stage of the Atlas V rocket. That was loaded several weeks ago during a countdown fueling test. You can see the progress of propellant loading in our graphic on our live stream. As I said, the Centaur liquid hydrogen fueling started a few minutes ago. Currently, it just passed the 10% mark. The liquid oxygen tank on the Centaur upper stage is at flight level, 100%. And liquid oxygen on the first stage passed the 10% mark several minutes ago as well. The Atlas V countdown just passed the T-minus 1 hour mark. The countdown is heading toward a built-in hold at T-minus 4 minutes. That hold will last a half hour. And during that hold, ULA's launch conductor will poll the Atlas V team for approval to enter the terminal countdown and a go for launch. At this point, liftoff remains set for 90 minutes from now at 11:12 a.m. Pacific time, 2:12 p.m. Eastern time, 18:12 UTC. Propellant loading into the Atlas V rocket is continuing. The Centaur liquid hydrogen tank just reached the 80% full mark. The Centaur liquid hydrogen tank will hold a little over 12,000 gallons of cryogenic fuel when fully loaded. On our live stream, you see a file photo of an Atlas V rocket on the launch pad at Vandenberg Space Force Base. We're expecting a live video feed from NASA to begin in the next 30 minutes or so, hopefully a little less than that, and we'll stream that live when it's available. And we just heard an update from ULA. The Atlas first stage liquid oxygen tank is now about half full. This tank will hold 48,800 gallons of super cold oxidizer when full. And loading of liquid oxygen into the Atlas first stage is taking a little longer than expected this morning as ULA works through an anomaly with a flow control valve. And there's no indication this flow control valve issue at this point will impact the launch time today. However, we'll stand by to hear from ULA as they get closer to launch time to see if liftoff will remain set for the opening of the window at 11:12 a.m. Pacific time. And also, we just heard that the liquid hydrogen tank on the Centaur stage is now at 96%, and the tank is now being topped off to flight level. This is Spaceflight Now with another update on the Atlas V countdown at Vandenberg Space Force Base. Propellant loading into the Atlas V rocket is nearing completion at this time. The Centaur liquid hydrogen tank is being topped off to flight level to the 100% mark, and liquid oxygen is just past the 80% mark in the Atlas first stage oxidizer tank. We heard a few minutes ago an update via Twitter from ULA CEO Tori Bruno that the bulky flow control valve issue noted earlier in the countdown is not a concern for launch. It has slowed the loading of liquid oxygen into the Atlas first stage this morning. But as I said, the Atlas first stage liquid oxygen tank is nearing completion in terms of loading, should be reaching the 100% mark soon. This is Stephen Clark from Spaceflight Now again. We're now receiving a live view of the Atlas V rocket at Slick 3 East, Space Launch Complex 3 East at Vandenberg Space Force Base. You can see it's quite a foggy morning at Vandenberg, per usual for this region of California's central coast. The marine layer has the launch pad socked in at this hour, and it's expected to remain this way through launch time. Liftoff is just under 1 hour away at 11:12 a.m. Pacific Time, 2:12 p.m. Eastern Time, 18:12 UTC. The propellant loading process is in the final stages at this point. Liquid oxygen is now being topped off on the Atlas first stage. It was at 97.5% a few moments ago. And the Centaur liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen levels are both at flight level or near flight level at this time. The first stage's Russian-made RD-180 engine burns kerosene fuel. The kerosene was loaded a few weeks ago during a countdown dress rehearsal and has remained on board since that time. In the last few minutes, the range team at Vandenberg has completed hold fire checks with the Atlas V rocket. This would be used to command an abort during the last moments of the countdown in the event of an issue. The Atlas V's flight termination system or destruct system has also passed a pre-launch test.
11:12 this morning Pacific time, and that puts us at L-40 minutes 20 seconds and counting. The first Landsat satellite launched in 1972, kicking off an uninterrupted stream of data for almost 50 years, and Landsat 9 will continue that streak today. Right now we are go for launch, but we'll get an update from Launch Control in just a minute.
This is Stephen
First,
Clark
some
with
key
Spaceflight
things
Now
to know
again.
about today's mission.
Liftoff of the
At
Atlas
least
V rocket is now 40 minutes away. The countdown is heading toward a built-in hold at T-minus 4 minutes. This hold will last 30 minutes in duration. And during this hold, ULA's launch conductor will poll the Atlas V launch team for approval to enter the terminal countdown and a go for launch.
we'll show you how the satellite works,
The Atlas V
turning light
rocket
into
is now
data for
fully loaded
scientists and
with
researchers.
liquid propellants. 66,000 gallons of cryogenic propellants were loaded into the Atlas V rocket this morning, joining a supply of RP1 kerosene in the Atlas first stage, which was loaded a few weeks ago.
Monitoring the countdown, and guys, we're going to go over to you to see how it's going. Daryl and Mick.
Yeah, welcome into the Mission Director Center, Marie, where behind me you can see the big screens of everything that's happening. We have the top leadership of NASA here, along with USGS and the Secretary of the Interior, along with other special guests. As you mentioned, we are now L-38 minutes and counting until launch at 11:12 a.m. Pacific time, 2:12 p.m. Eastern time. And we've got a 29-minute window. So far, things have been going pretty good. But Mick, it's been reported, it's out on social media, there was a little issue that they were working.
Yeah, the team was performing cryogenic tanking, and during that tanking, what we call our fast fill sequence, the team had to work through some issues with the valve. They were able to resolve that, get out of fast fill and into slow fill, or what we refer to as topping now for cryogenics, and everything is back on track. We're running roughly about 5 to 6 minutes behind for one of ours, but that is exactly why we're in this coming up hold. We'll be able to use some of that hold time to finish up that work.
Let's talk about that hold, because that's a good time to go ahead and mention that, right? We are just minutes away from going into an L-34 hold, and the T clock and the L clock will be a little different. Can you explain that?
Yeah, absolutely, Daryl. The L clock is what we refer to as time to launch. This clock continues to count throughout all the operations, and it includes the built-in hold times that we talked about, the T-minus 4 hold being 30 minutes. The T clock is what we refer to as the terminal clock, which tells the team to prepare their tasks at certain times, keep things going. But this clock does stop during those 30-minute holds. Both clocks will sync up at L- and T-minus 4 minutes, where everything then starts happening pretty fast by the team, and we get down to T0 or liftoff this morning.
And for the purposes of our audience and our broadcast, you will see that L clock in the upper left-hand part.
T-minus 6 minutes.
This is Stephen Clark from Spaceflight Now. Once again, we briefly lost our direct video feed from Vandenberg Space Force Base. However, we have recovered the video feed and we're now streaming live audio of the Atlas V launch team as they step through their countdown procedures. Liftoff of the Atlas V with Landsat 9 remains set for 11:12 a.m.
T-minus
Pacific,
5 minutes.
11:12 a.m. Pacific, 2:12 p.m. Eastern Time.
LC flight
The
command.
countdown.
Go.
At step 830, Atlas hydraulic standby pressure.
Roger.
The countdown is ticking toward a built-in hold at T-minus 4 minutes. This hold will last 30 minutes.
1 and 1. Go.
Atlas O2 at flight level.
Roger.
Center LO2 at flight level.
Roger.
Center LH2 at flight level.
Roger. SYS LC. And prop 1 LC.
This is prop 1.
Status on fuel fill sequence.
Yeah, 1 second.
And SYS LC.
T-minus 4 minutes and holding. This is
SYS.
a program 30-minute hold.
LC switch, not ready. And SYS status on step 800.
LC prop. Fuel fill sequence is complete.
Verified.
Roger, SYS. And you're still working the L3 balloon?
L3 balloon has just got delivered. We're in work processing it.
Roger. Okay, for the team on that one, this is LC. We are in a T-minus 4 built-in hold, working per the timeline and tracking no issue.
L minus 30 minutes.
RC, LC, that one.
This is CRC on 1.
Conduct weather briefing, channel 8, weather conference now.
Roger.
LC flight control.
Go flight control.
In Op 60, step 20, L3 primary steering file adjust underscore alpha victor 092 underscore 05 with SDL-CRC Foxtrot 098 has been received, verified, and is ready to load into Inca.
Proceed with load.
Roger.
This is Stephen Clark with Spaceflight Now once again. Liftoff of the Atlas V rocket is now 28 minutes away. The payload on this mission is Landsat 9. It's the next in a series of land imaging missions launched since 1972. And together, the fleet of Landsat satellites have tracked nearly 50 years of city growth, climate change, and trends in use of lands for agriculture and infrastructure. The Landsat program is a joint effort between NASA and the U.S. Geological Survey. NASA is in charge of spacecraft development and launch services, and the USGS is responsible for developing and operating ground systems and keeping the Landsat data archive accessible to users around the world free of charge. The USGS will also be responsible for operating the spacecraft after today's launch. The Landsat 9 spacecraft, fully fueled, weighs 5,975 pounds or 2,710 kilograms. The spacecraft is cocooned inside the 4-meter diameter payload fairing on top of the Atlas V rocket. And Landsat 9 will climb into a polar orbit around 438 miles or 705 kilometers above Earth. And its 2 instruments will survey the planet once every 16 days in image slots that are 115 miles or 185 kilometers across. The spacecraft was built by Northrop Grumman in Gilbert, Arizona. 2 instruments, the Operational Land Imager 2 and the Thermal Infrared Sensor 2. And the total mission was developed for a little less than $750 million, according to NASA. That includes the cost of the spacecraft, launch services from United Launch Alliance, and the 2 instruments on board. Landsat 9 will take the place of Landsat 7 in the USGS Landsat constellation. Landsat 7 was launched back in 1999 from Vandenberg Space Force Base. And Landsat 7 is operating well
L
beyond its
minus
design lifetime.
25 minutes.
Landsat 9, once operational in the coming months, will join Landsat 8 in the active fleet of Landsat satellites. Landsat 8 was launched back in 2013 aboard a previous Atlas V rocket launch. Together, Landsat 8 and 9, which are mostly identical satellites, will be able to survey the planet every 8 days. Each satellite alone can do that every 16 days. Again, we're approaching the 24-minute point, L minus 24 minutes, until liftoff of the Landsat 9 spacecraft from Vandenberg Space Force Base in California. We're not aware of any issues in the countdown at this point. As the countdown clock continues holding at T minus 4 minutes, this hold will end at 11:08 a.m. Pacific time, 1:08 p.m. Eastern time, with the clock resuming at T minus 4 minutes and counting.
LC flight control.
Go flight control.
At step 40, L3 primary steering file adjust underscore 8 Alpha Victor 092 underscore 05 with SDLCRC Foxtrot 098 has been verified and loaded into Inca.
Roger.
L minus 21 minutes. L minus 13 minutes.
NSC, LC Net 1.
NSC.
Spacecraft to internal power.
Roger.
This is Stephen Clark again from Spaceflight Now, an update on the Atlas V countdown. You probably just heard the Landsat 9 spacecraft is now being transitioned to internal power. This is one of the final steps to configure the payload for liftoff. Up until now, the Landsat 9 spacecraft inside the Atlas V payload fairing has been receiving its power from ground supplies. Otherwise, all's quiet on the Atlas V countdown net at this time. No issues are known that could prevent launch at 11:12 a.m. Pacific time, 2:12 p.m. Eastern time. In a few minutes, we'll hear the customary pre-launch readiness check. During this check, the ULA launch conductor will poll his launch team for concurrence to resume the countdown and target liftoff of the Atlas V rocket at 11:12 a.m. Pacific. ULA's launch conductor will also poll the NASA launch director, Tim Dunn, as well as the ULA mission director, or launch director rather, for approval to resume the countdown.
All communications switch to channel 1. All personnel and visitors remain in present position until launch. Maintain operational silence in the LCC.
Terminal count briefing. If a condition exceeds a launch constraint any time after a terminal count status check, the observer shall announce hold, hold, hold on channel 1, identify their station, and briefly state the reason for the hold. And COM LC, Net 1.
Yeah, LC, go ahead.
Are you taking care of that issue on the COM?
Yeah, we heard it.
Roger. Flight control, perform launch on time verification.
Roger.
FTS, verify the hold fire switch is in the proceed position.
Verified.
RLM, verify red line monitor event table in the correct configuration. For terminal count. RC, verify solar radiation acceptable for launch.
Verified.
Launch on time verified.
Roger. Okay, for all personnel, all steps are complete prior to the status check. LC switch to the ready position.
L minus 8 minutes. L minus 7 minutes.
Status check to proceed with terminal count. Atlas systems, propulsion.
Go.
Hydraulics.
Go.
Pneumatics.
Go.
LO2.
Go.
Water.
Go.
Centaur systems, propulsion.
Go.
Pneumatics.
Go.
LO2.
Go.
LH2.
Go.
Has gas.
Go.
Electrical systems, airborne.
Go.
Ground.
Go.
Facility.
Go.
RFFTS.
Go.
Flight control.
Go.
GCQ.
Go.
Operation support.
Go.
COM.
Go.
Umbilicals.
Go.
ECS.
Go.
Red line monitor.
Go.
Quality.
Go.
Op safety manager.
Go.
ULA safety officer.
Go.
Vehicle system engineer.
Go.
Anomaly chief.
Go.
Range coordinator.
Clear to proceed.
Launch director.
You have permission to launch.
ALC. Verify T0 is set for 1812 Zulu.
Verified.
Proceeding with the count. LO2.
L minus 5 minutes, 30 seconds.
NSC. Verify spacecraft is configured for launch.
LC, spacecraft is configured for launch.
Roger. All steps are complete prior to terminal count.
On my mark, the time will be T minus 4 minutes and counting. 3, 2, 1, mark. 3:55.
Ground pyros enabled.
This is Stephen Clark again, Spaceflight Now. The countdown has resumed at T minus 4 minutes, and after a unanimous go poll from the ULA launch team. We'll stand by and let you listen in to the Atlas V team as the countdown continues to tick toward liftoff at 11:12 a.m.
3
Pacific
minutes.
time.
Securing the LO2 topping.
Atlas tanks to flight pressure.
250.
FTS.
$159.
Vehicle internal.
155.
Launch sequencers.
150.
Securing Centaur LH2.
Securing Centaur LO2.
140.
Launch enabled.
137.
FTS armed.
120.
Both use armed.
FCS count start.
110.
Pit valves locked.
1 minute.
Rock, report range status.
The range is green.
$40.
Stable at step 3.
25.
Status check. Go Atlas.
Go Centaur.
Go Landsat 9.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Release.
Engines at full thrust. Liftoff. Now 15 seconds into flight. Atlas propellant utilization system has gone to closed loop control. System response looks good. RD-180 engine operating parameters continue to look good. Vehicle has begun the pitch over maneuver. Body rates look good. Now passing 40 seconds into flight. Engine operating parameters continue to look good. Pump speeds and injector pressures all within expected ranges. Now 55 seconds into flight. Vehicle is now completing the pitch over maneuver. Body rate responses continue to look good. 3 minutes remaining in the boost phase of flight. Pump speeds and injector pressures on the RD-180 continue to look good.
For operations 70, step 30, adjust the security roadblocks. Dispatch teams to slick 3 east. Order slick 3
Body rates continuing to look good.
Hold for pad entry.
Roger.
And at 1 minute 20 seconds into flight, Atlas is now supersonic. Vehicle passing Mach 1. And vehicle is now passing max Q, maximum dynamic pressure. RD-180 performance continues to look good throughout boost phase. Engine's now throttling down slightly as expected. Engine response looks good. At 1 minute 50 seconds into flight, vehicle is now 10.7, 13 miles in altitude, 7.9 miles downrange distance, traveling at 1,500 miles per hour. Now just under 2 minutes remaining in the boost phase of flight. At 2 minutes 18 seconds, the Atlas V vehicle now weighs just 1/2 of its liftoff weight. And vehicle's gone to closed loop guidance. Body rates indicating a slight adjustment can be expected for this phase of flight. And the reaction control system on the Centaur is now pressurizing to flight levels. System pressure response looks good. 2 minutes 50 seconds into flight. RD-180 engine operating parameters continue to look good throughout boost phase. Body rates remain stable. Now passing 3 minutes into flight. Approximately 1 minute remaining now until booster engine cutoff. And now 3 minutes 15 seconds into flight. Atlas is 48 miles in altitude, 70 miles downrange distance, traveling at 5,600 miles per hour. Pump speeds and injector pressures on RD-180 continue to look good throughout boost phase. And the Atlas V is now throttling to maintain a constant 5G acceleration limit. Engine response looks good. And Centaur's begun boost phase chill down. Now throttling to maintain a constant 4.6G acceleration limit in preparation for BECO. And we have BECO booster engine cutoff standing by for stage Sept. And we have good indication of Atlas Centaur separation. We have pre-start on the RL-10, standing by for ignition. We have ignition and full thrust on the RL-10. Chamber pressure looks good. Body rates look good. And we have good indication of payload fairing jettison. This first burn of today's mission will last approximately 12 minutes, 11 seconds. RL-10 performance continues to look good in the early part of this first burn. Now passing 4 minutes, 47 seconds into flight. And at 5 minutes into flight, Centaur is now 158 miles in altitude, 297 miles downrange distance, traveling at 9,600 miles per hour. And the Centaur propellant utilization system has gone to closed loop control. System response looks good. RL-10 engine performance continues to look good through this first burn. Now 5 minutes, 45 seconds into flight. And we are seeing the expected initial firings of the RCS system for loop thermal conditioning and cap bed warming. Body rates remaining very stable throughout this first burn, and RL-10 engine performance continues to look nominal. Now 6 minutes, 35 seconds into flight. Centaur is now 246 miles in altitude, 522 miles downrange distance, traveling at 9,800 miles per hour. Centaur is now performing a roll for telemetry optimization as expected. Body rate responses look good. Our L10 engine operating parameters continue to look good throughout this first burn. Now coming up on 7 minutes, 30 seconds into flight. And the initial reaction control system motor firings are continuing as expected, and we are seeing the loop temperatures approaching bottle temperatures as expected. Body rates remaining very stable throughout this burn. Our L10 engine operating parameters continue to look good. Approximately 8 minutes now remaining in the burn. And we have received initial indication from the boost phase indicating a nominal booster performance. Now passing 9 minutes into flight, Centaur is now 340 miles in altitude, 897 miles downrange distance, traveling at 10,700 miles per hour. Centaur systems all continuing to perform nominally throughout this first burn, continuing to see consistent values on the RL10 engine operating parameters. Body rates continue to look good and continue to see some periodic thruster activity as expected. Now approximately 6 minutes remaining in the burn. Centaur is now 380 miles in altitude, 1,167 miles downrange distance, traveling at 11,600 miles per hour. Propellant utilization system control continues to look good throughout this first burn. RL10 engine operating parameters also look good. Now just under 5 minutes remaining in the burn. RL10 engine operating parameters continue to look good. Body rates remain stable. RCS motor thruster firings are continuing as expected and continuing to see the loop temperatures maintain close proximity to bottle temps as expected. Now passing 12 minutes, 30 seconds into flight, Centaur is now 408 miles in altitude, 1,530 miles downrange distance, traveling at 13,000 miles per hour. And we have seen a periodic drop or a momentary dropout in telemetry as the Centaur telemetry format has changed to the TDRS compatible format. Telemetry quality looks good. Approximately 3 minutes now remaining until main engine cutoff. Centaur engine operating parameters continue to look good. Body rates remain stable throughout this first burn, and continue to see some periodic thruster activity on the RCS system. Now passing 14 minutes into flight. Now 2 minutes remaining in the burn. Centaur systems all continue to perform nominally throughout this first burn. Now 90 seconds remaining until MECO. One minute remaining until main engine cutoff. RL-10 engine operating parameters continue to look good in the final minute prior to engine cutoff. Body rates remain stable. RCS thruster activity is continuing as expected, and the PU system is maintaining control of propellant utilization as expected. And 30 seconds now remaining in the burn. And standing by for MECO in approximately 10 seconds. And we have MECO, main engine cutoff. Body rates look good. Vehicle is now recovering from the shutdown transients. Centaur is now entering into a approximately 60-minute coast prior to spacecraft separation. Centaur systems all continue to operate nominally following the burn. Centaur is now turning to the desired passive thermal control roll attitude and beginning the roll. Body rates look good. They're seeing some minor periodic dropouts in telemetry, but telemetry quality overall continues to look good throughout the flight. RCS system has engaged the 100% 4S settling following the burn as expected. Now passing 19 minutes, 30 seconds into flight. Centaur systems operating nominally throughout the coast. Seeing good values on RCS storage bottle temperatures and pressures. Helium storage bottle pressure looks good. LOX and LH2 tank pressures look good as well. Body rates indicating the vehicle is continuing to turn to the desired PTC attitude. RCS thruster firings are continuing as expected. Now passing 20 minutes, 30 seconds into flight. And after a brief review of the performance during the first burn, we see the major orbital elements, apogee, perigee, and inclination all very close to pre-flight predictions. And vehicle body rates in pitch and yaw have nulled out nicely now, indicating the vehicle has completed the turn to the PTC attitude. And body rates indicate the roll is continuing as expected. Settling motors on the RCS system are ramping down in duty cycle now as expected.
This is Stephen Clark from Spaceflight Now again. If you've been monitoring today's launch, you'll know that the Atlas V rocket has achieved orbit after a successful liftoff from
Now
Vandenberg.
approaching 25 minutes into flight, Centaur systems all continuing to operate as expected throughout the coast. We are continuing to see the PTC roll. Helium and RCS fuel storage bottle pressures look good. RCS system temperatures continue to look nominal. LOX and LH2 tank pressures also look nominal. And RCS system is continuing periodic thruster firing as expected.
And once again, the Atlas V rocket successfully lifted off from Vandenberg Space Force Base around 25 minutes ago at 11:12 a.m. Pacific time or 2:12 p.m. Eastern time. We saw a smooth climb out of the Atlas V heading south from Vandenberg, arcing out over the Pacific Ocean. The liftoff itself was shrouded in the customary or typical marine layer at Vandenberg. However, we saw some really nice infrared views of the rocket as it climbed into space, as well as some onboard video from a camera on the rocket itself. The first stage's RD-180 engine burned for about 4 minutes as expected, then shut down, and the bronze first stage of the Atlas booster separated, then followed by ignition of the RL-10 upper stage on the Centaur, the RL-10 engine, excuse me, on the Centaur upper stage. And that Centaur burn lasted for around 12 minutes or so to inject the Landsat 9 spacecraft into orbit. The live telemetry commentary from ULA throughout the flight indicated everything appeared to work perfectly throughout the climb into orbit. The Landsat 9 spacecraft is still attached to the Centaur upper stage. Separation of that spacecraft is expected at 12:32 p.m. Pacific time, 3:32 p.m. Eastern time. That's a little less than an hour from now. While the Centaur upper stage is coasting in orbit, it is now in a thermal control roll, or a barbecue roll, as it's sometimes called. This ensures that the circumference all around the Centaur upper stage remains at about the same temperature to ensure one side doesn't get too hot or one side too cold in space. The rocket will coast over Antarctica, then head northbound back over Africa before deploying the Landsat 9 spacecraft over Eastern Europe. Again, that's expected in about
now passing 28 minutes into flight, Centaur systems continue to operate as expected throughout the coast. And telemetry data quality overall looks very good. We are seeing some periodic dropouts. But telemetry quality overall is very good.
So once Landsat 9 separates from the Centaur upper stage, the RL-10 engine will reignite 2 times, each for about 10 seconds, to maneuver into a slightly lower orbit. That'll set up for separation of 4 small CubeSat secondary payloads from the rocket. Those separations are expected in a little over 2 hours after liftoff. Those 4 CubeSats include 2 sponsored by NASA. One will look at how the solar wind impacts the Earth, and the other will look at atmospheres around planets around other stars. There are 2 additional CubeSats on board to carry out communications experiments for the U.S. military. So once again, everything is going smoothly 29 minutes into the flight of the Atlas V rocket with Landsat 9. This is a pretty quiet period in the flight as we await separation of Landsat 9 in about 50 minutes.
now at 30 minutes, 40 seconds into flight. Approximately 50 minutes now remaining in the coast until spacecraft separation. Centaur is continuing the passive thermal control role as expected. Vehicle body rates continue to look good throughout the coast. Now approaching 35 minutes into flight. Just under 46 minutes now remaining until spacecraft separation. Centaur systems all continuing to operate as expected throughout the coast. On the RCS system, we are continuing to see periodic thruster activity as the settling motors are in their low duty cycle. RCS loop temperatures are maintaining close proximity to bottle temperatures as expected. Now approximately 40 minutes remaining in the coast. As we're passing 40 minutes, 45 seconds into flight, Centaur systems all continuing to operate as expected throughout the coast. Seeing stable values on main vehicle battery temperature and voltages. LOX and LH2 tank pressures have maintained stable values throughout the coast as well. And vehicle is continuing the PTC roll as expected. Body rates continue to look nominal. Now just over 45 minutes into flight. Centaur systems all continuing to operate as expected throughout the coast. Vehicle is continuing the PTC roll as expected, and we are continuing to see some periodic thruster activity. RCS loop temperatures have continued to maintain close proximity to bottle temps. about 35 minutes now remaining in the coast until spacecraft separation. Now passing 50 minutes into flight, just under 31 minutes now remaining in the coast. Vehicle is continuing the PTC roll as expected. Did see a PTC roll reversal a few minutes ago. Centaur systems all continuing to look good throughout the coast. We are seeing stable values on RCS fuel bottle and helium storage bottle pressures. LOX and LH2 tank pressures also look good. Now passing 1 hour into flight, Centaur systems continue to perform nominally throughout the coast. Vehicle is continuing the PTC roll as expected. Telemetry data quality looks very good in the latter part of the coast, only seeing very minor periodic data dropouts. Now just over 20 minutes remaining until spacecraft separation.
This is Stephen Clark from Spaceflight Now once again with a recap update. The Atlas V rocket lifted off from Vandenberg Space Force Base a little over an hour ago with the Landsat 9 Earth observation satellite for NASA and the U.S. Geological Survey. The rocket's climb into orbit proceeded as planned, with the Centaur upper stage of the Atlas V arriving in orbit about 16.5 minutes after liftoff from Vandenberg. Since then, the rocket has been coasting around the Earth in orbit. It's flown over Antarctica, now is heading north, back over Africa, heading for the proper location in space for separation of Landsat 9. That separation is expected in about 18 minutes at 3:32 p.m. Eastern Time or 12:32 p.m. Pacific Time. And that separation event is timed for when the rocket is in the proper location relative to ground stations to be able to track the spacecraft after deployment. So once again, all's quiet, more or less, with the Atlas V launch at this time. However, a few more key events to come, beginning with separation of Landsat 9, the primary payload on this mission, in about 17 minutes now. After that event, the Centaur upper stage will reignite its RL-10 main engine 2 times, each for 10 seconds. That'll lower the altitude of the rocket to a slightly lower orbit, and that will set the stage for release of 4 small CubeSat rideshare payloads from the rocket. Those 4 payloads include 2 sponsored by NASA and 2 small CubeSats sponsored by the U.S. military. So once again, at T plus 1 hour and 3 minutes, everything looks good so far with this Atlas V flight with Landsat 9.
Now 15 minutes remaining until spacecraft separation. Centaur continuing the PTC roll. Body rates continue to look good. And RCS system is continuing periodic thruster firing activity as expected, settling motors, maintaining the low duty cycle throughout the coast. Now 10 minutes remaining in the coast prior to spacecraft separation. Centaur systems all continue to look good as vehicle progresses into the final phase of the coast prior to spacecraft SEP. PTC roll is continuing as expected. Also see periodic thruster firings. RCS loop temperatures have maintained close proximity to bottle temps. And we are seeing stable values on LOX and LH2 tank pressures, main vehicle battery temperatures and pressures, helium storage bottle pressures, and the RCS fuel storage bottle pressure as well. All look good. Now passing 1 hour, 12 minutes into flight. Just under 9 minutes now remaining until spacecraft separation. Now 7 minutes remaining until spacecraft separation. Now less than 5 minutes remaining until spacecraft separation. Centaur systems all looking good. Centaur is now completing the PTC roll as expected in preparation for spacecraft separation. And Centaur is now turning to the desired spacecraft separation attitude. Body rates look good. Now 4 minutes remaining until spacecraft sep.
This is Stephen Clark from Spaceflight Now once again. We're now inside 4 minutes from separation of the Landsat 9 Earth observation satellite. We heard just moments ago that the Centaur upper stage is now firing its thrusters to move into the proper attitude or orientation for separation of Landsat 9. The Landsat 9 spacecraft is the 9th in a series of Landsat Earth observation satellites developed by NASA and the U.S. Geological Survey since 1972. This spacecraft was built by Northrop Grumman.
3 minutes remaining in the coast now until spacecraft separation.
It carries 2 instruments, an operational land imager and a thermal infrared sensor to track changes on Earth's land surfaces in infrared and visible bands. Scientists use this data to track everything from agriculture.
And we are seeing some loss of telemetry as the vehicle is completing the turn to the spacecraft attitude, and we have regained telemetry.
This Landsat data is used by scientists to track everything from urban sprawl to agriculture and crop yields to the health of Earth's forests.
Two minutes remaining now until spacecraft separation. Body rates and roll pitch and yaw have nulled out nicely now as Centaur prepares for spacecraft sep. One minute now remaining until spacecraft sep. Body rates continuing to stay near zero as Centaur is prepared for spacecraft separation. "30 seconds remaining until separation. And standing by for spacecraft separation shortly. And we have successful separation of the Landsat 9 observatory.
This is Stephen Clark from Spaceflight Now, and there you have it. Landsat 9 has deployed from the Atlas V rocket, beginning a 10-year mission, or mission lasting at least 5 years, with potential to extend that to 10 years.
Centaur is now entering into a 30-minute coast prior to MES 2. Centaur now turning to the desired CCAM attitude following successful spacecraft separation. Body rates look good.
Com check on. Com check on.
This is Stephen Clark once again from Spaceflight Now to recap. United Launch Alliance's Atlas V rocket successfully launched from Vandenberg Space Force Base in California at 11:12 a.m. Pacific Time, 2:12 p.m. Eastern Time. And we saw just a few minutes ago the Landsat 9 spacecraft successfully separated from the Atlas V's Centaur upper stage in orbit about 420 miles above the Earth. Landsat 9 is beginning a mission to track changes on Earth's land surfaces. It has 2 instruments to monitor the health of vegetation, to monitor the growth of cities and coastal waters around the world. We won't be able to provide live coverage of the remainder of the mission. The Centaur upper stage will fire 2 more times to change its orbit to release 4 CubeSats for NASA and the U.S. military. United Launch Alliance has ended its live feed of audio to the media, despite the mission still having several critical milestones to complete to deploy these secondary payloads. So check with our Mission Status Center in the next coming hour or 2 for updates on these CubeSat deployments and the official outcome of the entire mission. Again, thanks for joining us for our live coverage. We'll close it out with audio commentary here, but we'll continue text updates in our Mission Status Center as we receive news on further updates from United Launch Alliance and from NASA.
Centaur is continuing the turn to the desired CCAM attitude as expected. Body rates continue to look good. And Centaur systems continue to look nominal through the coast following spacecraft separation. And after initial review of vehicle performance data following spacecraft separation, major orbital elements, apogee, perigee, and inclination all look very close to pre-flight values.